So if you look at this picture, and if you try a careful reading of the pictures, because pictures not only have to be looked at, but deserve a close reading, like in a complex philosophical text. You will distinguish a lot of characteristic elements. First of all, you have to know that this mosaic has been found in a Roman villa near Napoli, and that the archaeologist made the proposal to locate or to date these pictures into the 1st century before our age. So it belongs to the period when Roman had started to import Greek philosophy. The main businessman in this new import business at that time was obviously Cicero, who was, as it were, the founding father of Roman philosophy. And they imported philosophy just as a new lifestyle. It is the lifestyle of those who have found out that the classical Roman lifestyle did no longer work. After half a century of civil war, that was only ended by the nephew of Caesar, Octavianus. He later on adopted the cognomen Augustus. The Roman lifestyle, which was a life totally dedicated to the republican concerns and the sacrifice of your private life in favor of the flourishing republican community. When Romans discovered the impossibility of democracy and republican life, they also became ready for philosophy, which is actually a parallel phenomenon with that what happened in the 4th century before our age in Athens. The real philosophy business began after the defeat of Athens in the 3rd year's war against Sparta, when Athens was definitively defeated, when it had become clear that republican and democratic life is no longer a serious option for Athenian people, when it had become clear that the polis is no longer the highest framework for decent human life. Plato and his successors designed a new way of life that made a proposal to the intelligent individuals to become citizens of the world instead of citizens of the polis. So they transferred the very idea of citizenship from the allegiance to a city towards the allegiance to a realm of truth that they called cosmopolis. Actually, the term cosmopolis was a Stoic concept and not a Platonic one, but the perspective of the proposals for philosophical life, be they Stoic or Platonic or later on Epicurean, were all directed towards the same point of view. In Aristotle, you will find that the philosopher, or he who knows about the deeper roots of existence, will in the future always be a xenos within the society of the citizens. This is the beginning of philosophical alienation. As I tried to tell you, yesterday evening in the presentation of the Catalan version of the temperament, the philosophic tempers, the classical philosophy was a device to establish a happy consciousness for a minority of chosen ones. It is, as it were, the creation of a new chosen people, as it were, the only non-Jewish community that carries this quality of a chosen people, and who could carry with pride their situation as a noble minority. You have to know that if you look at this picture, because you see a group of seven who incarnate that strange field of chosenness. You can see it in the design of the picture. These seven people have assembled under a tree, quite in a kind of stylish reduction, and under a certain amount of columns. Yeah? In one of these columns, you see the gnomon, which is the sun clock. Yeah? If you look quite close to the picture, at the top of the middle column, yeah, you can see the gnomon, which is the stick in the middle of the sun clock. So these people are already living within a measured time. It is no longer the time of intuition, when the sun alone gives you a feeling if it is sooner or later, early in the morning or later in the evening. They are already living in a time that is structured by the consciousness that time is running, and that the chapters of running time are something that we have learned to call ours. These men are already living in ours. That is something that did not go without saying, because in other times, in former times, the hour was not yet there. It is a Mesopotamian heritage, by the way, just as our habit to divide the hours in 60 minutes is also a Mesopotamian habit. And our habit to divide the week in 7 days is probably the most Mesopotamian trait in our form of life. We are still, knowing or not, we are all still Mesopotamian septenteists, because if we are not ready to believe in one God, but we are still ready to believe in the 7 days of the week. And this sevenhood is our real religion. So all that is real has to happen within on one of these 7 days of the week. So that is our Mesopotamian heritage. And to a certain extent also these seven people that have gathered around the tree, or better, around a mystic object which you can hardly see at the bottom of the image. These seven people incarnate, as it were, the Mesopotamian consciousness of the holiness of the number of seven. That is a heritage that the Greek also had taken from the Near Orient. But this time we do not deal with 7 days, but with 7 sages. Or if you want, with 7 philosophers. I cannot deal here with the difference between a sage, an old sage, and a philosopher. May it suffice to say that philosophy arises when the shamans enter into the city. It is just philosophy in its beginning is a kind of urbanization of shamanism. You know, so they have to prove that they can be still useful, not only when people are living in villages and lost in the mountains and feeling utterly helpless when confronted with diseases and psychic troubles and bad dreams. But they can be of any use also when people have decided to lead a life after the synoikismos. Synoikismos, in the Greek terminology, that strange decisions that village people and fortress dwellers, also the old aristocrats, took when they decided to look for a common form of security behind shared walls of a fortified city. And this gesture, this decision to live together behind the walls that provide new security for village dwellers and people who had lived on castles and fortifications for hundreds of years. This act of resignation, which is at the same time politically productive, was called synoikismos in the Greek terminology. And this is a founding myth of the Greek polis, which is actually used for almost all cities, all polis in Greece except Athens. So it has a different story. And after the synoikismos, people live together in the big city and have decided to sacrifice, or to, at least to devote their whole lives for the security and the prosperity of their own city. But suddenly you see on this picture, we have 7 people gathering in a place that is absolutely not in the middle of the city, but in the outskirts of the city, maybe half a mile away, or even one mile or 2 miles away. You see the fortifications in the background. You see that these people do not meet in the city. They have withdrawn. They have fulfilled a gesture. They have fulfilled a gesture that in the philosophy of the 20th century would have been called back the epoche. That means a step back from the city, or better, a step aside, or a step away. Take it topologically, however you want. What is decisive is a gesture of withdrawal of a group of given persons from the ordinary assemblies of political mortals who stay in the city. So they have withdrawn. And the number of 7 indicates already that it is not an ordinary assembly, but maybe the constitutive reunion, so the coming together for an extraordinary event. In my interpretation, I make the proposal to read this scene as a kind of philosophical Pentecostal event, because here, for the first time, the idea of the sphere invades the human mind. And we have 7 sages, or 7 philosophers. We could call them philosophers from now on, because they have dropped the bad habits of shamanism in order to become big city shamans, or alias philosophers. And these people develop a new discourse. They pretend that they understand what the world is all about. And now I am very unhappy that you will not be able to see the details of the picture. Maybe we could put it on nevertheless, because there is one detail. Ist es nicht mehr da? Ja.
Do you have here one? No.
Mhm. Ja. Mhm. Okay. Oh, it is still quite. Okay. Ja, here we go. I have to draw your attention.
Nee, wir machen es anders. Wir lassen mein Buch zirkulieren.
Ja.
Wir lassen mein Buch zirkulieren. Dejemos circular mi ejemplar.
I draw your attention to this field in the picture. You just need a little bit of imagination, as you will see very clearly. We have here a kind of small seat, a kind of podium, at the bottom. A small podium or a socle. And on this socle, you find a strange object, a really strange object. And this is probably the first representation of a scientific spiral. Obviously, you cannot see it with your physical eyes, but with a little bit of imagination, you will see that here we have a kind of sphere, so a bull, that is shaped by meridians and horizontal lines. So it is not only a classical sphere, but it is already the sphere of geometers and cosmologists. And the 7 people are standing around discussing this phenomenon, and the presbyter, so the eldest among these 7 philosophers, is holding a stick in his hand. You can see that on. Here is his hand, and in his hand he has a stick that was called radius in the language of the time, radius, and which is of radius, which is, as it were, seen from the point of view of phenomenology, the material intentionality. So, and teachers in former time always used to have the radius in the hand, or the Zeigestab. They have this, which is intentionality pure, and they point to a certain point of the surface of the spiral. And actually, you can imagine that he is explaining the qualities of the spiral to his fellow philosophers, and they all together share, as it were, a kind of Pentecostal enlightenment when discussing over this strange object. And in my interpretation, I pretend that philosophy itself had an event that can be compared with the Pentecostal event of the Christian tradition, but the spirit was not infused from above. Pentecost was a discussion. This is something relatively new, and it could be compared with the Jewish equivalent for the Pentecostal event, which actually used to happen exactly 50 days, like in the Christian tradition, 50 days after the resurrection of the Lord, which is the celebration of the handing out of the book. This is one of the most important Jewish feasts. But what is so important is the fact that here, in the year 100 before our age, or maybe 50 before the turning of the ages, the Roman started quoting Greek philosophical traditions. You may all know that Martin Heidegger remained for all his lifetime very hostile against the very idea of Roman philosophy. He never admitted that something like this could exist. But from the point of view of the history of ideas, it cannot be denied that there is a Roman philosophy, and the mosaic of Torre Annunziata is simply the physical proof of its existence. It was found in a villa near Napoli, and was transferred into the Museo Nazionale in Naples, where you still can find it. On some days, the guides in the museum are willing to show these pictures. Usually you have to pay them an extra tip, because the mosaic of Torre Annunziata is hanging immediately next to the pornographic pictures, the pornographic mosaics that are only shown if the tourists pay an extra tip. So if you ever go there, be prepared to have a couple of euro in your pocket, and you must show a strong interest for pornographic mosaics when you when you really want to see what philosophy was in the first century. This is a strange cabinet. Until 20 years, women were not allowed to go inside. So we had the strange phenomenon that not only in churches but also in the porno cabinet of philosophy, women were not admitted. Mulia taceat in philosophia. This is the Napoli slogan of Torre Annunziata. So let us see how many. There's another picture of the Spheira. I would like to show you this Spheira in a different format. Here maybe you can see a little bit what the Spheira is all about. So the podium is hollow until this height, so that the ball enters into the podium, and here uses the meridians and all these geometrical lines that help you to understand that the symbol of totality, which is the perfect sphere, here is obviously not the Earth. That is very important. It is a cosmos as such. It is a cosmographic, not a geographical symbol. And these meridians are heaven or Uranic meridians. Maybe they contain the zodiacal. I'm not sure. If this line could be interpreted as kind of zodiacus. By the way, you see the small particles of the mosaic here. They are simply too gross to allow special interpretations of the lines of the spiral. Because in reality, the picture as such is not bigger than this. and the real picture is maybe like this. Okay. We go on. Okay. We need this one. Also from Pei. This is the goddess Orania. She's already playing on an allegorical level the same game. It's not necessarily the gesture of a philosopher alone, but the same gesture that the philosopher performed when he was talking about the sphere in technical and philosophical terms, the same gesture is taken up by the goddess Orania, who is talking about quasi herself. It is a kind of self-interpretation. She also has this geometricized sphere in front of her, holding the same radius into her hand and pronouncing a kind of cosmological, geometrical and philosophical discourse on that object that is, as it were, a projection of her own essence, because Orania is the goddess of the skies, and she has at the same time the geometrical projection of her very essence in front of her. And that is, for me, and this and the sphere is also laid on this kind of podium, so that whenever it comes to the discussion about cosmology, you will regularly find two components, a carrier element at the top, usually in the form of a dice, or a cadre, un socle rectangulaire, in the form of a dice, and the bowl, the spheric object, which is laid on this. So we have the two primordial geometrical forms, the dice and the sphere, coming almost always together. So, and this is a hint to the fact that geometrical representation is not possible without the demonstration or the representation of a support. This is very important because they have to be suspended somewhere. They need a kind of groundwork. There is no absolute sphere representation. The very moment you represent it, you have to say where it is. And the most plausible way to say where it is to lay it on a dice, or on a kind of podium or socle. And that creates a strange relationship between the sphere and all other kinds of monuments, because monuments usually require also a socle, a podium, a support that elevates it and makes clear that it is not a trivial object that could simply lie on the ground. It has to be represented in an own certain way. And you could go as far as saying that the inferior part is an altar. Because it is an holy object. That is the reason why it is the mere hypothesis to putting it directly on the ground is included. It has to be put on a supplementary support, and this supplementary support in its highest representation is an altar. And we find the most sublime interpretation of this idea in Goethe's installation, an installation that Goethe made in the garden of his house in Weimar. I wonder if you have ever been to Weimar and have seen the garden house near the river of the Ilm in 1777 when he entered this house, which he kept until the end of his life. He moved into the center of the city, the famous house of the Frauenplan, from where he had only several steps to the theater and to the castle, but he always kept the garden house. And in front of the garden house, he erected, as it were, a personal altar that he called the altar of good luck, Altar des guten Glückes. And that consisted exactly of such a dice element and a sphere element. I'm trying to find the picture. Do you have it somewhere in your...
Altar de la felicidad buena.
Yes?
Altar de la felicidad buena. En el sentido del bueno, del bien aristotélico. Todo esto de Goethe se sigue conservando hoy tal cual. Tanto la casa como el jardín, incluso las plantas. Yo vengo del extranjero allí y es increíble. Parece que está uno en 1800. Hasta las caravanas con los caballos llevando a los turistas por carreteras empedradas tan estrechas como las de Girona.
I'm sorry, I can't find it at the moment. But it doesn't matter. It's simply imaginable. It's still there. It is in a quite bad shape. The people of Weimar never cared for that, and it is in a very poor state today. But the idea is still absolutely clear. Goethe had that magnificent intuition that there are only two cosmic symbols that are able to incarnate cosmic harmony, and one of which is a dice, and the other one is a sphere. And if you bring both of them together, the dice must become the altar of the sphereological totality. So let me see. Your copies run from page 43 until page 125. So that includes most of the pictures I wanted to talk with you today. Except one, which is on page 41 of, for those of you who have the book in your hand, you could take this one. Here. It takes a little bit of time for the eyes to get adjusted. What you see here is probably the most important political morphological gesture a man is able to perform in the Western culture. You see here, approximately, this is a hand, but not the hand of whomsoever. It is a hand of a Roman emperor. And in this hand, you have the fire. And here begins an extremely important iconological topos, according to which there are among us a certain number of people who have the strange destiny that the cosmos is laid into their hand. And if you would like to generalize, as Nietzsche did. He said, there is the golden ball of being is thrown from I do not know where, from where, but to be a human being is nothing other than the opportunity to catch the golden ball of being that has been thrown by God or by itself or by an unknown force. So the gesture of having catched and kept this ball, which represents the cosmic totality, is as it were the strongest cosmological symbol that European tradition was ever able to produce. And I might remind you that in the third part of Zarathustra, there's a chapter when Zarathustra is talking to his friends when he says, the thing I love most in the world is seeing you, my friends, catching the ball. And did not speak as a football trainer, to be sure. Because for him it was clear that he was speaking about the golden ball of being, and that the amor fati as such means to keep your hands open and ready for the moment when the golden ball of being comes and mit einem schönen Pass. Ja.
Ich lache die ganze Zeit, Guardiola als Master 10 Neonito.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but from now on we are together with our documents. Please open your copies on page 48. Das ist dieses hier. Ja.
Aber ich habe jetzt die spanische Kopie. Geometría en lo inmenso.
Ja. Geometría en lo inmenso. Du kannst es nicht mitsetzen. Ja. Here, on the left side, you see a very impressive symbol of what happened to the sphere in the imperial age. You see the symbolic prise de pouvoir, that is the taking power of the emperor by putting his foot on the sphere. This is an old gesture that originally came from the Persian tradition. You know that the Western civilization has been infected by the Persian virus in the 4th century before our age, when Alexander made his, as it were, campaign or crusade into the east. And then he discovered that a new idea of monarchy had already been established between Mesopotamia and Persia. And Alexander was a man who caught first this Persian virus, or the Mesopotamian virus, because in this part of the world the very idea of the big kingness had been conceived. An ordinary king, as the Germanic and Romanic and Greek people knew it already, ordinary kings are rulers of their people. In Mesopotamia and in Persia, they had developed a new idea of kingdom, where the king does not rule people, but the king is a ruler on kings who are ruling on people. So they are second-order kings, we would say, and they wear higher crowns than ordinary kings do. This is, by the way, one of the reasons why in the 14th century, when exiled in France, the Pope discovered this strange idea to wear an even higher crown than the emperors did, the emperors of the Germanic Empire did, and that led to the conception of the tiara. So the third order crown that had a third ring on it. But when Alexander encountered the Persian culture, he was immediately overwhelmed by the observation that this kind of ruling is not ruling people, but ruling kings who are ruling people. And this was the moment, the most dangerous moment for the Western culture, because the infection of Alexander's soul with this Persian kind of megalomania became the psychopolitical pattern of what later on became Caesarism in the Roman tradition, and the Western imperialism is in an indirect and subtle way a mimetism of the Persian or Mesopotamian idea of the big king, of the king of kings, which is, by the way, also a biblical title for God himself, because the jealousy of the king of kings inevitably also infected the way the rabbinical intelligence talked about the king of heaven. This is inevitable. I have to make this commentary in order to give you a detailed glimpse into the meaning of the gesture that the person who incarnates the emperor on the image acts out. When he puts his foot on the spira, he imitates the gesture of the Oriental king when he receives the prostration, the prostration, and the gesture of surrendering to him by slaves or other kings. At least once in their lifetime, even kings must perform a gesture that allows the great king to put his foot on the neck of the king who is ruling only over the people. The Lord of the world is the one who is allowed to put his foot on the neck of a ruler. And that is a gesture that has a tremendous trajectory throughout the whole history of the representation of majesty in the Western culture, because all our Christian kings also had to play the role of servants to the highest king. And even the emperor had to do so. But here, in the Roman era, the emperor is allowed to put his foot on the cosmos symbol, and this is the beginning of a long series of cosmocratic representation that leads to the Byzantine representations of Christ in the attitude of the Christos Pantokrator, sitting at the right side of God, or even in the center of the tympanon, and spreading his hands in such a way that allows him to receive the totality of being. So that, by the way, he's also holding a long stick in his hand that later on became the stick that Western bishops and archbishops were carrying. It is, I think, the Greek term is the tyrsos or something like this. That goes back to old Greek traditions. In the next picture on page 49, opposite to the picture of the emperor, you see the picture from nicht Alberto, ist doch Albrecht. Albrecht. Is that in Spanish Alberto? Wird es Alberto? Wirklich? Aber Albrecht ist, wir haben auch Albert, aber nicht Albrecht.
In alemán
Okay.
son dos nombres diferentes.
So, yeah.
Albrecht y
Yeah,
Albert.
yeah, we have it.
Albrecht.
But it's correct Spanish in Spanish code. Alberto Durero. Aber Durero.
Durero, Alberto Durero.
Durero.
Vollkommen ist verwurzelt der Name.
Alberto Durero.
Los alemanes se ríen porque les hacen la españolización de nombres alemanes, como Martín Lutero o Carlos Marx. Pero bueno, los franceses a veces son peores. Sigmund Freud. Freud, c'est affreux.
Freud.
Le nom.
Affreux, ja.
Affreux, Freud, c'est affreux.
Freud, affreux. Das ist,
Los alemanes
okay.
respetan mucho el nombre original.
Yeah,
Dicen
okay.
siempre, incluso los españoles intentan pronunciarlos, los ingleses, los italianos. Entonces les choca la españolización de los nombres no españoles.
Yeah. Okay, however that may be, from an unknown artist whose name is Durero, we have a well-known, it is in fact ein Stich, was ist das in English, a graving, so ein Stich showing the goddess Fortuna with a couple of her classical attributes. She's wearing wings, which show their relationship with everything that is volatile. So volatility is one of the main features of good luck or of fortune, to be sure. She, in her left hand, she carries something that resembles the steering wheel of a ship. This is one of her oldest attributes, because there always has been a deep relationship with the sphere of the marine and seafaring activities. But the most important symbol, of course, is her balancing on the cosmic sphere. The Fortuna of Albrecht Dürer is an acrobat. So we have an acrobatic goddess that is mastering something that is not accessible for ordinary human beings, that balancing always on top of a rolling ball. You must imagine also Dürer deals with the problem that the sphere cannot be absolute but has to be placed somewhere. And he draws the conclusion to have this sphere, as it were, carried or suspended in a kind of envelope of tissues that keeps it away from the abyss. But one thing is sure, that the sphere is not stable, as that balancing on it is really an acrobatic exercise. But Fortuna is exactly the person to perform this exercise perfectly well. Whereas human beings, when they are running on Fortuna's sphere, are represented as people like on a kermesse, in Fortuna's wheel. Until today, in all kinds of popular feasts, you find these kinds of carousels or das Riesenrad. What is that in Spanish?
La rueda. Rueda.
The rueda, yeah. But the rueda, the Fortuna, is a classical, yeah, it's a gigantic rueda. So the best one is that in the Prater in Vienna, which is permanent. And also you have one in Paris next to the Jeu de Paume, don't you? Yeah. And these are all symbolizations of the rueda of Fortuna, that has four classical positions: to be on top, to be falling, to lie on the ground, and to climb up again. These are the four classical positions of the Wheel of Fortuna, and all human beings, except the spiritual one, who refuse to participate in Fortuna's games, but everyone else is condemned to travel on Fortuna's wheel and to learn how to deal with the alternation of the situations that you encounter if you make this perverse travel always around good luck up, good luck down, lying on the ground, be triumphantly on the height. And the European morality from the 11th century until the 18th century was basically nothing but the training to learn a kind of disengagement and a kind of enlightened neutrality towards the offers of Fortuna. Except, and this is the path that leads into modernity from the point of view of moral philosophy, except from the year 1500 approximately on, there was a second tendency that introduced the entrepreneurial individuals of the Western culture into an intimate relationship with Fortuna. Machiavelli told his fellow men that if Fortuna is a real woman, she likes to run with them who really know how to grasp that in the right moment. To grasp and never let go again. And this is the symbol of the new entrepreneurial existentialism. That means you marry an unfaithful woman. That means categorically, systematically unfaithful woman, but she can make you so happy like no other woman can do, under the risk that she can also make you as unhappy than as you never have believed before. So we have two types of Fortuna cultures in the modern society, and if you enter more deeply into the tradition, especially the literature of the 16th century, you will see that the Europeans have, even without noticing it, developed a complete double theology for different existential situations. For the standard situations of misery and uncertainty, of precarity of life, we have the Christian cosmos with all its symbols. But for the good moments of life, we have the cult of Fortuna. And Europeans are exactly the people that switch from one system to the other whenever the situation is given. So you get married, of course, under the sign of the Christian symbol. You get buried under Christian symbols and so forth. But when it comes to the question of business, you do it in the name of Fortuna. That's quite sure. And in our days, Fortuna herself appears at least twice a week on our TV shows. Saturday evening, there is the lottery fairy queen that announces the outcome of the lottery, and since 10 years or so, 10, 15 years, they appears also on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evening. We have the Mittwochslotto. And
¿Cada día? Spanien jeden Tag. Das ist doch besser.
Jeden Tag, ja, okay.
Mehr Fortuna.
But
Cada día hay 5. Jeden Tag 5 Mal. Volk der Fortuna. Pueblo de la Fortuna.
That shows that the Spaniards are much more religious people than the German. They are true believers, but if necessary, also Spaniards can switch to Christianism within a couple of seconds. That is religious training. And that means to be trained, that is the capacity to perform sudden moves, and to switch from the Fortuna cult to the Christian cult within a couple of minutes, without ever having the feeling to be an unfaithful believer. But unfortunately, Spanish theology is not yet at the height of the situation, because they would have to transform the Trinity into a quaternity, and finally include Fortuna into the Trinity. So Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and Fortuna.
The neue Pericores, la Pericores de prueba. Cuaternaria. Cuatrinidad.
The next two images you find here are of less importance. You find the Globo Imperial of the Emperors of Hohenstaufen on page 53. That is just another example for what I showed in the former picture here. This apple, or this Globo, is obviously designed to be carried by an imperial hand. And what is important is the cross on top of the globe, which is a clear indication for Christian imperialism. The next image is interesting on page 54, because for the first time we see a new gesture in the field of globes which are at hand or ready to hand. You may know, or maybe not know, that Martin Heidegger made a lot of interesting remarks on the difference between that which is vorhanden and that which is zur Hand, zuhanden.
Existe, ese juego con existe, está en la mano, sobre la mano, en la mano. No lo conozco muy bien en español, creo que también se discute en los traductores. Estar en la mano, a mano, sobre la mano, zuhanden, vorhanden. Ahí cada traductor en español dice una cosa. Yo les aconsejo seguir a Arturo Leite. No porque son amigos, sino porque me conoce muy bien alemán. Yo no solo pasivamente, sino que no habla.
The English translators have made the English translators have made a proposal to translate the Zuhandenheit with to be ready at hand, and das Vorhandenheit with at hand. Whereas the last expression indicates a higher degree of objectivation, because it is a kind of there-ness, and Vorhandensein, which is also on the way towards scientific objectivity. It is not already scientifically objectified, but it is already counted as something that is always present and can always be manipulated whenever necessary. That is vorhanden. As it were, it enters into the stock of being, or in a kind of storehouse of everything there is, and you can dispose about it whenever you want. That is the meaning of vorhanden. Whereas ready at hand.
Lo que existe, y lo otro es lo que está a mano.
Whereas at hand is something that is belongs as it were to your hand, like a glove. Or in another way, the things that are at hand require that the hand itself also belongs to the thing, and vice versa. So, my hammer requires my hand. That is to be at hand. The hammer is not a good hammer if he cannot count on my hand to take it when necessary and to work with it. So, in a way, my hand belongs as much to the hammer as the hammer belongs to me. And this is this Heideggerian ontological idylle, as it were. It is an idyllic situation of a mutuality between things and human beings. His famous example is also grammatically very suspect when he's speaking of a boat lying in the Titisee, at the border of the Titisee. And the German sentence goes like this: Das ist dem Hinterhofbauern sein Boot. I wonder if you can grasp the joke in it, because you use the dative form. It is to the Hinterhofbauer his boat.
Es un juego con el dativo y el nominativo en el propio idioma alemán, algo así como, voy a forzar la gramática española, es al campesino más paisano su mensaje, su correo, no es el correo del campesino, sino que es del campesino su. Y ahí es un juego también del alemán, ¿no? Esto es lo que estaba intentando explicar, esta dislocación entre el nominativo y el acusativo, y el nominativo y el dativo.
And that means literally that the Hinterhofbauer is, as it were, always in his boat.
Paisano rústico,
because the peasant or the campesino belongs to his boat, even if he's not there. The way of conceiving the boat is shaped in such a way that you cannot talk about the boat without saying that the campesino belongs to the boat, and not vice versa. And this is a kind of this ontological homeliness that the young Heidegger had been looking for. But if you look to the picture on page 54, you see something quite strange, because it's the hand of Queen. It is not Isabel; it is Queen Elizabeth. Because Isabel, if I'm not totally wrong, was never the queen of Inglaterra.
A los alemanes les choca mucho este juego.
It simply was Elizabeth. And Elizabeth really was the woman who was able to put her hand on the sphere, but this time we deal with the Earth globe. As you can see, but because there's the continents more or less precisely designed on the surface of the globe. And here we see a dramatic shift in the art of globe making. The globographers from the 17th century on developed the art of designing two different globes at the same time. Globography from the 17th century until almost exactly the year of Hegel's death, which is highly symbolic. Were always condemned to learn the art of producing two globes, the celestial globe and the earth globe. Both of them of the same size, both of them usually on the same table, on the same bureau, or in the same entrance hall of the same royal libraries. You find this symbolism almost everywhere, in Madrid, in Vienna, in all imperial capitals. You find this symbolism. You have to have two major spheres, one of which representing the terrestrial totality, the other one representing the Uranian totality, and this without the necessity for the globographer to make a statement about the relationship between these two. In some way, people are invited to imagine the Earth globe contained in the celestial globe without making precise indications about the situation of the Earth within the celestial globe. But both of them, that is the important point, both of them are necessarily still seen from outside in the tradition of the first moment, the first triumphant moment of representational thinking. So the totality becomes as such an object, and there is never again a question about being in the world, because the world is everything, not in Wittgensteinian terms, which is the case, thought. The world is everything which is represented under the form of a globe in front of you. That is a epistemological totally new form. Wo haben wir das?
Sehr gut, Se me ha ocurrido proponerle que leamos juntos.
Kannst du das lesen? Liest du die spanische Form? Ich folge das.
Propongo que leamos, porque condensa muy bien este motivo y al mismo tiempo es el enlace sistemático con la sesión de ayer, que leamos juntos el último parágrafo de la página 54 del volumen 2, porque es un párrafo que condensa muy bien todo lo que está diciendo en su lengua. ¿Lo tenemos? Así pues, la imagen del globo máximo suscita la pregunta por la colocación del centro y, consecuentemente, por la identidad y residencia del soberano universal. Apremia al mismo tiempo el pensar figurativamente representativo, tratando de ofrecer una solución al problema de si la propia esfera omniabarcante puede estar colocada, juega en alemán con el Gestell, el Stellen de Heidegger, tratando de ofrecer una solución al problema de si la propia esfera omniabarcante puede estar colocada a su vez sobre un apoyo o una base. ¿Sobre qué fundamento sería lícito sustentar al todo, sea en la imagen, en el concepto o en lo real? ¿En qué funda o perímetro habría que introducir la esfera de todas las esferas, tanto en la representación como en la realidad? ¿Qué o quién ha de soportar lo que soporta todo? ¿O hemos de aceptar ya la debida idea de que lo envolvente se contiene a sí mismo y pende en el vacío, solo por su propio poder, sin apoyarse en algo exterior? Lo de los container, que se contienen, también un poco la respuesta a esta pregunta de ayer, o la continuación de la respuesta, todavía sin finalizar.
Yeah, but the modern concept will consist in the idea that the sphere of all spheres does not need an outer container nor an outer support. It is, as it were, a self-supporting structure, which is, on the other hand, a very demanding concept, because usually in the world of ordinary gravitation, it is inevitable to conceive the relationship between ground and superstructure. If something is there, you always need a support. And the most beautiful illustration
de Sloterdijk, sí, de la página del volumen 2. De la página... ¿Perdón?
Das ist Seite 55 oben.
Ah, no, eso es una... Ah, sí, habría que verlo al final. A ver, ¿alguien lo puede proseguir, por favor? Tenía que verlo, no lo sé, yo ahora...
Que te habla de Aristóteles.
Ah, no, sí, es Sloterdijk que hace un excurso. Véalo después en la cita final. Es una cita de Sloterdijk que hace... Bueno, es que son las 4.000 páginas brutales. Es su cabeza que es brutal. Sí, pero es un autocomentario, un autoexcurso. Pero es pertinente la pregunta, claro, porque a veces no se sabe si es una cita de un texto o desde el propio autor, efectivamente. Está simplemente anotado. Sí, es cierto. Ja, was verwirrt, was für eine...
Ja, nach der Quelle. Ja,
Ja, genau.
Ja.
Du weiterredest oder wer das Subjekt der Rede war.
Ja.
An dieser Stelle. Interessante Bemerkung. Ne?
On page 61, we'll find my favorite.
Sí, la imagen de la página 56.
Yeah, auf Seite 61, you find my favorite picture. This is the Atlante Farnese from the Museo Nazionale in Naples. It originally was discovered in the 16th century when they did some works in Rome, and it was taken to Napoli, where you can find it until today in the main hall of the Museo Nazionale in the first floor, and it immediately strikes your eyes because it occupies a central position in the big hall, and it is really impressive. It is monumental. Almost two meters high, and it contains the most beautiful globe, the most beautiful, most complete, almost unique, the only complete sphere, celestial sphere that has come down from antiquity into our days. You know? All other globes we know about are only mentioned in literary quotations. You know. We know that Archimedes had constructed quite a big globe, but they all have disappeared. This is the only one that has materially survived, and you see really what Atlas means and what an Atlas does. You know, and why our modern map books are still called Atlanten, you know, or an atlas, you know, because the question of the carrier, you know, is at the center of the art of map making and world representation, you know, without a clear indication on the identity of the carrier. We do not even understand what a map could be, or especially when it comes to the question of the map of the totality. Yeah? And here again, we encounter the riddle inherent to all these kind of representations, the riddle to identify the point of view of the observer. Yeah? Because you see our Atlas character, the Titan, who carries, by the way, all the characteristic attributes of the philosopher. He's wearing a beard, which was at that time a clear hint to the identity of this person as a philosopher. You know. So beard questions, philosophic questions to the highest degree. Yeah. We know of this famous anecdote, you know, that the nomination of a young candidate in Athens for tenure in Athens, yeah.
Rahmen ist Ptolemäisch, ne?
Ja.
Rahmen ist noch Ptolemäisch.
Ja.
Nicht Kopernikansch.
Ja.
Deswegen die Säule, die den Himmel.
Yeah, but his case was reported to Rome, where the emperor by himself had to decide of a young candidate for the position of a permanent position of a philosopher at the academy in Athens. the emperor by himself had to decide whether the candidate could be get tenure or not, because they made the objections that he had no beard yet. So but in his case, it's clear he has all the beauty of a bearded philosopher, and by the way, he also carries the second attribute of the philosopher, that is the coat on his right side. Stoics and Cynics has a reputation for their decision not to sleep in ordinary beds, but on the ground, and this was the reason why they needed their coats. But they should not have a second coat, only one. And they should not use a cushion for their head, but lie the head directly on the ground. But you see very, very clearly that this celestial sphere has become, as it were, a kind of celestial library. It is covered with the symbols of the classical Sternbilder. What is the Spanish?
Formación de estrellas.
Yeah. Die Sternbilder.
Constelaciones.
The constellations. Yeah. There were 48 classical constellations, and every constellation carried a small library of histories or mythology that was connected to the symbol. Here you see the symbol of the ship. That is a constellation of the southern part of the European sky. That is why you only see one half, because it disappears during winter and comes back, but it never comes fully back, but only one half. That's the reason why you only see one half. So you see the sea serpent, and a certain number but also you see some meridional rings. Maybe you see also some elements of the zodiacus, but I'm not quite sure, because the picture does not show the full size of the globe. But what is essential, that the ancient cosmography and globography was a training medium for what Heidegger later on called das Zeitalter des Weltbildes, the age of the vision of the world, the age of the picture of the world, which actually did not begin in the Renaissance or in modern times. Certainly, modernity is the golden age of mapmaking, and what Heidegger has in mind is, of course, the fact that from this 16th century on, there is a strong tendency towards a total transformation of reality into maps. And the man as never has been in such a temptation to mix and to confound world making and map making. But the tendency as such is already to be seen in the early form of globography. And what is disturbing for Heidegger is always the fact that the observer is always in the wrong position, because it is impossible to include the observer on the level of the outer observation. We all become outer observers at the very moment we use the macrosphereological basic symbol, which is the sphere seen from outside. And Heidegger's concern is how to bring the observer or the existing individual back into the sphere of observation. And the first step is made here in this picture that has already a kind of Heideggerian quality to it, because Atlas has an existential relationship to the totality, because he feels how heavy it is. So heaviness, Schwere, is an existential quality. And even if Atlas is outside the sphere in its own way is already inside him, because it reveals to him the reality of gravitation. And as soon as existence is permeated by the feeling of gravitation, we have already entered the space where we get authentic existential experiences. And we are removing from the point of view of the easy gods, the easy observer gods that always stand outside. And our observer godliness is put into question the very moment when we assume our Atlas function. So human beings are not only creatures who have the opportunity to carry the image of the golden cosmos on their hand. They also carry it on their shoulders, and they were, as it were, crucified on the cosmos symbol, which is a hidden equivalent for the Christian cross. You will see that in the history of this Atlas iconography, the parallels between Atlas and the Christ become more and more speaking until the moment when the Amsterdam Atlas, which is on the top of the royal palace in the middle of the town. Maybe you have seen that. Which is after restoration, you can see it very clearly. He carries the sphere exactly in the attitude of a crucified Atlas, so that both of these symbols are melting into each other by and by. Yeah.
Una media frase que representa esto muy bien está al final del primer párrafo, en la página 56, en la edición española debajo de la foto, cuando Sloterdijk escribe: existir significa soportar el peso del cielo.
Yeah, that's it.
Existir significa soportar el peso del cielo. Como siempre en Sloterdijk, después de mucha narración, de repente hay una verdichtung, una densificación de su pensamiento, y a veces incluso media frase, como es este caso, ¿no?
Yeah. And that means that the question of the carrier, the support, finds a new answer, that existence itself comes into the position of the so-called hypokaimenon, but not in the arrogant way Heidegger has been deconstructing, but in the very humble way of being content to carry the burden of the world as such. And if we continue, we find another series of pictures that can illustrate that. On page 76, you find two pictures taken from the roof of the Royal Library in Vienna, where you have quite strange Atlas characters. On the left side, it is a more or less classical Atlas carrying an immense sphere of 4 meters diameter. Do you have that? Page 76.
Sí, 69 en español. Sí.
Yeah.
No, 56.
Yeah. You have a different pagination. Yeah.
Sí, sí, claro.
Yeah. It is 69 in. Ja. Darf ich mal weiter die Seite 2 noch, bitte? Wo sind die? Hier, das ist ein nettes Bild. Kannst du dazu ein bisschen was sagen? Das sind die Gestelle. Ja. Soportar. Ja.
Me dice que improvise algo sobre las figuras de la página 74.
So this is a kind of photographic essay about the question of
en español.
It is
Soportar, coger, sostener, estar a la base, sobre el todo y su pedestal. O sea, que improvise algo sobre Heidegger en español y Sloterdijk. Ich soll hier improvisieren über dich und Heidegger, ne?
It is a kind of a satirical commentary on the question of Gestell, in Heidegger. Because there has to be something to carry the rest, and as long as you conceive the world as something that needs an outer carrier, you still are in the field of representational thinking, and that is the way that Heidegger wants to make to unlearn you in order to think the different way. But you will see that it is absolutely possible to make a Heideggerian approach only by contemplating ways of visual representation of the sphere of being. But the moment we make one step further, in the term, we do not know that. We do not need that. Seite 86, 87, was ist das in der Frage? Ja, hier.
Das ist hier.
Ja.
Rafael,
ja.
77.
77. You have this.
Lo otro lo improvisan ustedes, sobre Heidegger, en la pausa.
This is a sublime detail from one of the most famous pictures of Raffaele di Santi, the School of Athens. And you hear the group of the cosmologists. One of them is holding the celestial sphere in his hands. By the way, in a very graceful and elegant way. On 3 fingers, he has the whole celestial sphere. And on the other hand, also in a very easy way, the geographer carries the terrestrial sphere. They are discussing, just holding these objects without further complications. But then you turn the page and suddenly you enter into a totally different dimension, because for the first time we encounter a representation of the human being in the world that really assumes the position that should be taken, the position from inside. That is what happens when you enter the Pantheon in Rome. So architecture is a really philosophical medium, because as Paul Valéry explained us in his marvelous essay, and his dialogue essay, Eupalinos ou l'architecte. That means that architecture is about including human beings into the work of human beings. So architecture is about inclusion, or to put it in a different terminology, it is about immersion. Immersion is a technical approach to situationism. Heidegger, as a philosophical situationist, introduced a new form of reflections that help us to understand that we are always intellectually misled if we only use outer representations of the totality of being. And instead of that, it is necessary to find a new point of departure for human orientation and human reflection. And that should be a point of departure that would not seduce us to leave our real situation. So this Heideggerian situationism
¿Saben lo que es el situacionismo?
is
Estético y político de la posguerra. Es un movimiento estético-político de los surgido en París que intentaban rehacer todo el urbanismo moderno. Es una especie de tardía consecuencia de todo el movimiento de los años 20 de la Bauhaus, de Weimar y de Dessau. Y es un movimiento artístico y al mismo tiempo arquitectónico. Intentó repensar el espacio estético y ciudadano y político. Y aquí está jugando Sloterdijk con la metáfora del situacionismo de este y el situacionalismo, ¿no? De situación, de espacio, de geometría en Heidegger.
Yeah. And that means if you really want to find a new point of departure and not yield to the seduction of representational thinking that has already objectified the world as something you can look to from outside. The only way is to step back into the sphere, and refuse all invitations for the next spaceship that will carry you out into the commodities and into the comfortable situation of outer reflection. And the first classical cosmic symbol of a quasi pre-Heideggerian Parmenidean approach is the Pantheon in Rome. If you enter the Pantheon, you immediately can understand what the Parmenidean approach to the question of being could be, because it means circumspection. It is not the observation of the totality seen from outside, like in this classical sphereological representation, but it is circumspection, invitation to circumspection. And the Parmenidean eye is, as it were, an artificial eye that can perform a 360 degree outlook. It is a divine eye. It is not a lateralized eye that is in this direction and cannot look behind. The Parmenidean eye is a divine eye that is sitting in the center of being and receiving from all parts of being homogeneous aspects, and at the same time throwing homogeneous glimpsing with a divine indifference. So that is the reason why being has only one information, and that is fairness. So you look around, and from all parts of being you receive the same answer, the same information, the same tubulatory feedback, which is, here it is, and here it is, and here it is, and it is everywhere. And it has no parts, because all parts contain the same information. It is a perfect homogeneous sphere. You look around in every direction, and from everywhere the same stream of information enters into the center, and in the center there is a computer, an ontological computer, calculating for a while, and that produces one result, and prints this result, and it comes out, and it contains only one word, and that is being. Point. Point final. This is the ontological high noon. Yeah, so this is Nietzsche's Mittags fantasy. The ontological high noon fantasy of Nietzsche in Zarathustra. The world becomes silent. The world has become perfect. You almost do no longer dare to breathe by fearing you could disturb the perfection of being. That is the most beautiful part of Zarathustra. It's the fourth part of the Zarathustra, the Zarathustra idyll. This is quite marvelous. But this is actually exactly what is at stake when you try to deliver a philosophical interpretation of the dome and of this cupola of the Pantheon. You must know that the Pantheon is designed in such a way that the visible dome is supplemented by the invisible inferior part of the dome, and if you put these two parts of the cupola, two domes, the visible one and the invisible one together, you get the perfect sphere. And if you choose a standpoint in the middle of the temple, you are included within this perfect sphere. And for the first time, you could make the strange experience how it feels to be at the inner surface of a virtual full circle. Because for us, existential creatures, we always are at the outer surface of a sphere. So we exist literally because the earth does not really contain us, but we are surface dwellers of the earth, and we always are disturbed ourselves, disturbing the perfect roundness of the earth by our own bodies and by our buildings, and by the fact that the earth itself obviously did not bother to produce a perfectly round surface. The earth itself is quite chaotic, and you have to withdraw quite far in order to see its roundness. That's where the seafarers, when they disappeared behind the horizon, that first discovered that the earth is round, because if you disappear behind the horizon on the sea, you guess for the first time that you are on a huge sphere. Usually, if you are in the countryside, on the festland, on the terra firma, there's nothing that would produce the idea that the earth is round. But with this, the picture of Piranesi showing the cupola, the dome of the Pantheon, we almost have reached the goal of our philosophical exercise, because it leads towards the Parmenidean at the same time the Heideggerian point of view of insightness. And from here we enter into a totally different space, philosophically and geometrically. I have a lot of pictures that shows that in modern times also architects have made an effort to reproduce the point of view of inwardness in the construction of world vision. For instance, towards the end of the 19th century, a new genre in the field of fine arts came up, called the panorama. It was a kind of drawing that surrounded the observer. The cinema. There were panoramatic cinemas that surrounded the observer with moving pictures from all sides at the same time. We invented the new cosmological medium of the planetarium, where the observer is sitting in a chair, confronted with a dark sky covered with thousands of tiny light spots. Technically extremely demanding. I remember quite well when my grandfather took me for the first time to the planetarium in Munich, and I always had strange feeling with the skies, and actually I would say I didn't like it. I was not such a star fan. And but the most beautiful symbol of what wir haben das nächste, to carry the cosmos. Let me just finish the series with a couple of other pictures. Ich würde noch gerne dieses zeigen, der Frisius, 98.
Was ist das
in English? No.
In English?
The Spanish. Where's the Spanish version of this?
800.
Yeah, 40%.
La imagen antes de la placenta.
Yeah. Here we go. 88, 89. Yeah. This is a shocking confrontation of two pictures. On the left side, you see the hands of a cosmographer, Frisius, holding a celestial sphere in his hand. This is a legitimate picture because it simply shows what the cosmographer himself, Frisius, had produced. So he does not commit a special mistake when he takes the heaven so easily in both of his hands. But on the right side, you see something which is a little bit macabre, but that makes sense in the light of what we said yesterday about the prenatal genesis of human beings, the psychoacoustic genesis of the human space, and the fact that human beings have originally already have been accompanied by an anonymous organ that was always there while we were coming into existence. We did not elaborate on this question, but here you can see, and the funny thing is that you also have these two hands that try to manipulate, as it were, a celestial body. But this is a celestial body that disappears immediately after the birth of the individual. Usually it is simply thrown away. And in counterculture, sometimes some women eat it, and there are quite macabre recipes. One of them is going back to Hildegard von Bingen, the German mystic of the 12th century. These are strange things. I see in your face that you would not, you wouldn't like that. So I don't think that we are good placenta eaters. But nevertheless, I think it is helpful to keep in mind that there is, among all objects in our vision of the world, that if one object really deserves the epithet forgotten, it is this one. Heidegger has been speaking a lot of forgetfulness of being. I'm not really sure if he is right and if being had really ever been that much forgotten. And every philosopher who deserves his title has in the 20th century has invented a new form of forgetfulness. Louis Garret has invented the forgetfulness of the air. The breathing forgetfulness. And, everybody has forgotten anything or something. And, but if there's something that is really forgotten and has nevertheless had a major importance in your life, then this is this macabre organ. That was, as it were, your anonymous twin. And we all are twins, according to my psychological interpretation of individuality. It is impossible not to be a twin, and we are also the rest of a couple of which the other part has disappeared. So, if there's anything that deserves to be called forgetfulness, it is the twin forgetfulness, and the name of the twin is categorically anonymous, because we never baptized the placenta. I promised you a mad trip.
Ich schlage, dass wir vielleicht langsam zu Ende gehen. Propondría que quizás para ir acabando una cita.
We come to an end. I just wanted to show you a last metamorphosis of the problem of carriers of the sphere on page 39 we encounter the Christian transformation of the carriage problem. Here we have Maria con el niño. She carries the niño carries the sphere. So here we enter into the rich field of phenomena which I call the metaphysics of cooperation. That human beings are cooperative individuals has also a meaning for the task of carrying the sphere together. In the next picture, you see two playful transformations of the idea, Terra Nutrix, from an emblematic book of the 17th century. Here you see how the body of the earth is transformed immediately into the sphere, but the sphere has breasts, and on the sphere you have the continent. So it is really Terra. It's no longer the cosmic symbol. It is Terra. Terra, the earth. Terra with breast. Terra with a baby, feeding her own children, and at the bottom you still see other children fed by animals. Yeah. So this is a funny transformation of the idea of spheric existence. And then, one step further, we discover the very rich symbolism of Christobal, the Christophoros problem. Christophoros, in the name itself, says what it is about. There is a kind of human being who has the task to carry the Christ, to become the carrier of the Christ. And here this is quite charming from the Spanish painter de Ribera, because the child is quite for flirting with Cristoforo, and he does not really have the globe, the sphere in his hand, but he puts it on the shoulder of Cristoforo. So Cristoforo is a double carrier. Usually the child carries the sphere in his hand, and Cristoforo must carry the child. And he's wondering why it is so heavy. But here, San Cristobal has both of them in his shoulder, the child and the sphere next to the child. This is a very charming transformation of the picture, but in the classical way, the Maestro de Meßkirch in the south of Germany. That's by the way, Meßkirch is the place where Heidegger is born. It is this very strange transformation of the classical image, because here the baby Christ is included within a transparent sphere, a transparent cosmological sphere. And on page 101, you see the political projection of this idea. You see Carlos Quinto, Tinto, yeah? Yeah. Tinto, yeah. Carlos Negro, Negro. Ja, also Karl V, yeah, as a political atlas carrying a globe of which it is a little bit difficult to say if it is the celestial or the terrestrial globe, but that carries a kind of ghirlanda with the text "O quam grave onus," oh, what a heavy burden, which is obviously a quotation from Horace, the first letter dedicated to Augustus, cum tot sustenias et tanta negotia solus. This is an elegy to Emperor Augustus. You who are carrying that much and that big task all alone. That is a part of the European political cosmology and a type of the classical praise of the emperor. And then one step further, the allegorical dissolution of the question you see in a book of emblemas of the 17th century, Amor as Atlas. So love becomes also a kind of world carrier. It is an elegant and playful transformation of the motive. And finally, we reach that monstrous atlas at the Rockefeller Center on D. Lowry in New York, 1937. By the way, this is the year when the Golden Gate Bridge in California was finished. It is we are at the top of American Titanism. We have an atlas who is, as it were, the elder brother of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and his globe is no longer a celestial nor a terrestrial body, but just as a symbol of ways of communication. These are already, as it were, TV cables or electric cables that have transformed the world into everything that can be surrounded by electronic signals. This is a new cosmology incarnated in this picture, and he is also in an attitude that resembles a little bit to an Americanized Christ. He is, so as it were, crucified at a TV channel. But to say a last word, I found the signature of Christophorus Columbus somewhere in one of the books I have been studying at the time, and I liked that very much, and would not miss the opportunity to show you his personal signature, because he really had a kind of auto-hypnotic mania. So, like most of modern people are condemned to produce a kind of auto-hypnotic personality. And the best way to do it is to interpret your own name, if you are lucky enough to carry a meaningful name. And luckily, his real first name was Cristoforo. Nobody had the slightest idea what Christophorus would really mean, because I don't think your parents wanted you to become a new emperor of Spain when they called you Carlos, didn't they? I don't think so. And when my parents called...
Aber es ist auch der Karl V.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter, Karl, yeah. No, he was also king of Spain under the name of Charles I. But my parents didn't think of me becoming a new pope either, when calling me Peter. And I never in my whole life felt the temptation to become a real Peter. So, I mean, semantically, because it would mean to become a rock, even the divine rock. I'm not that much attracted to rockness. It is a fine scholastic category, but rockness doesn't lead anywhere. But for Columbus, things were different. He looked deeply into his own name, Cristoforo, and one day he must have understood that it is his personal mission to carry Christ across the next water. The water of Jordan or the water of any European river had already been used for other kinds of transportation. So the next water Christopher was confronting was obviously the Atlantic water. And this was part of his auto-hypnotical self-invention. And in his later days, he signed his letters with this symbol, SSIS. These are abbreviations for his military and marine titles. And then his proper name is a composition of three Greek letters, the chi, the rho, and omega, what means Christo, and the Latin letters for ferens, the carrier. So, and it is not the past tense, but the present tense. So that means the man who right now is carrying the Christ. Okay. So that far as a little introduction of the philosophical art of carrying the world and carrying babies that are by themselves carrying the world and so forth. And it is at the same time an introduction into Christianity, inevitably, because if Christians are Christ carriers, they must also learn to become Christophoroi, because as a Christ carrier, you carry the one who carries the world. And there is no way out.
15 segundos de atención, tan solo me gustaría que acabásemos ya casi como una especie de Überleitung donde continúa de entrada en lo que viene después, con una cita final de la página 91. En alemán está en porque yo voy a hablar después de un poco, voy a intentar enmarcar a Sloterdijk en la historia y el pensamiento de la filosofía, quizás a ella le resulte más conocidas algunas cosas, aunque eso hay también mucho de extremum, de extrañamiento por lo que el propio hace. Cuarta línea. La filosofía clásica significa la exigencia de entender que el medio está en otra parte. Es verdad que cuando están en sus cabales, los seres humanos son requeridos y están cautivados por el centro, pero no son ese centro mismo. Lo que en el siglo XX, sobre todo en los discursos del antimodernismo católico, se ha llamado la pérdida del centro, la luz de mito, ansia del maya, es, visto desde la perspectiva de los mortales ilustrados, un acontecimiento que sucedió toda una era antes, condicionado por la interpretación metafísica del nuevo puño del espacio. Esta sacó a relucir algo digno de atención, que los seres humanos se desplazan del centro porque en un punto que no está en ellos mismos se impone en su pensamiento como punto medio absoluto enfrente, bienvenido. Desde entonces, ser humano significa existir en un epicentro del absoluto. Existencia epicéntrica, a su vez, significa saberse exhalado e influido por el aliento de un centro supremo sin poder confundirse con él mismo. Esto lo explicaré un poco después en mis propias palabras. Bueno, ich glaube, wir sollten uns allen gönnen. Yo diría, ahora mando yo, media hora de pausa, ¿de acuerdo?
Ahora, ja.
Media hora.
Nicht so lang, nicht so lang.
20 Minuten?
Es wird zu lang, ja.
1 menos 20, 1 menos 10. E intentaré que no sea más larga mi intervención, que iba a ser de 1 hora, que no sea más de media hora solo, para que podamos dialogar. ¿De acuerdo?
Okay.